Welcome to week 5. There are a couple housekeeping items I wanted to talk with you about, but first of all, let me say that you guys have done a really good job of taking risks, which is the whole point of learning. I hear over and over again from my adult students that they're uncomfortable if they don't know how to do something. Well, the fact is that the reason you're here is because you don't know how to do something. So give yourself a break and get okay with the feeling of I don't know what I'm doing, because that's why you're here. I think for some reason, non-traditional students, adults, we have jobs, we have experience, we have responsibilities, and I think that we're extra hard on ourselves sometimes, thinking that we should have been somehow born with the skills that we're actually supposed to learn in our course. So kudos to you. Couple of things about grading. If you're not earning full credit on your discussions, you need to review the rubric. There's just no way around the fact that discussions are interactive, and typically you won't get credit for anything that is sort of the ilk of good job. I appreciated your comments, good observations. That's surface talk, and I want substance. The whole thing about the discussions is that this is where you get a chance to apply what you've learned, make mistakes, fail safely, and then learn from failing, by figuring out, okay, next time I should do this or I should have done that. Either way, but I want to take a quick look at some things about our typical discussions. In the first week, I gave you a snapshot of our discussion participation rubric, and I've given you a couple of ideas along with it of what it is that you should be doing, what the targets are. So I've been somewhat lenient with like the first 3 weeks, I think, of deadlines. There were maybe only 1 or 2 people that were outside of the deadlines, but from here on out, be assured that if you don't post your initial response by day 4, you won't earn full credit for it, which is a shame because a lot of times I see these really amazing responses that are unfortunately done on the last day, which is day 7. So if you keep in mind that this is an accelerated course in that we're doing 16 weeks of work in 8, you'll recognize that the number of hours that you would spend on a course, a 3-semester hour course during a normal week in a 16-week term, would be 6 to 8 hours per week. Now, from the design perspective, I think it would be stupid to just say, okay, we'll just do double the work in half the time. And I see that, unfortunately, way too often. It's the most ridiculous substitution for an instructional philosophy that I think I've ever come across, but it's very prevalent. So in my case, what I've done is try to design the course so that you're only going to see and do exactly what it is you need to do. There's no fat, there's no fluff, just the facts, just what you need to know, and hopefully pretty good descriptions of what it is that I'm looking for. So keep all that in mind. And go back to week 1 if you need to take a look at, when your postings are due. I put all of this pretty clearly here. But then again, if you go into your grade book and you see that you're only earning, maybe 2 points or 3 points for responses to others, then you're not giving substance. So while I am not ever sitting here counting words, I do count the fact that you should be putting in some time on the course. And I can see on the back end how much time you spend on every single thing you do within the course. So, if your total user time is not somewhere around at least 24 hours that you've already spent on this course, through week 4, through the end of week 4, you're skimping, and your performance probably reflects that. The other thing is too that if you don't read all of the materials like you're required to do, you can go through each module and certainly view it. You don't have to read it if you don't want to, but your work will show. It'll show that you haven't done it. So, this little complete all items thing up here, that's because, now and then I've had students say to me, well, I didn't know I was supposed to do that, or, that wasn't in the materials, when in fact, everything is aligned. And I mean aligned down to the last little detail about what you're assessed on and how that aligns with the course goals, objectives, and outcomes. Goals are generally, what are we going to do? Okay. Objectives are, how are we going to do it? And outcomes are, how did we do when we did it? How do we perform? So keep those things in mind, and I've tried to be as explicit and clear as possible on what it is that you should take away from each module. As an example, when we look at the objectives for each week, we can see, this is the revised Bloom's taxonomy that I'm using, by the way, which if you're in the learning design program, you should know what that is. Basically down here, we've got memory, just, terms, that kind of stuff. What are we talking about? Because you have to know some of the terms and what they mean in order to be conversant. So that's kind of the point of that. Understand is to get the big picture, but not necessarily be able to do much more than, explain it. Then, when we analyze, we're going to compare things. Think of, what is it that we're supposed to be doing? How are we going to do it? And then how we did is the analyze and evaluate part, okay? So when we have to evaluate something, we're usually taking a field of a couple of things and looking at those things compared with benchmarks for performance, or compared with using some criteria that tells us either we're on par or we're subpar, or we've just exceeded all expectations. So keep those in mind. And for week 4, of course, we had to create comprehensive profiles for personas. Say that 10 times fast. For conceptual reverse engineering. I mean, that is a big mouthful. But basically what we did was look at all the details of what a particular type of user with specific needs and a specific lifestyle would be looking for in a particular application or user interface. So keep all that in mind. So let's see, I've talked about earning full credit. Another thing that's really important that you should very, very much be aware of is that you have to post before seeing others' postings. Now, if you respond to someone else before posting your initial posting, or if you just happen to post an empty response and then you come back to it and edit it later, realize I can see that, and I believe I said this early on somewhere in the course introduction module, that will become an issue of academic integrity, i.e. cheating. So rarely does it happen and rarely does it become a problem, but if I've mentioned this to you in my comments on the back end of the grading, you should pay attention to it and make sure you don't do it again. It's a mistake that somebody can make, but sometimes if I see things like your response to others appeared before your posting, because they're all time-stamped, I'm going to raise an eyebrow. So just be aware of what the expectations are there. In terms of attachments, this is a tough one. For most courses, I disable the ability for students to attach things to their discussions, mainly because, within the context of what we're doing here, we're looking at user interface and user experience. Well, the user experience goes straight down the tubes whenever you have to click into a discussion and then open something else. And depending upon what type of device you're using, it disrupts the flow. That said, there may be times I'm thinking of very, very specific things like videos. If you're doing a video capture of you using a specific interface for the first time and analyzing that, and using that to evaluate the user interface and thusly your user experience, that's one thing. But there's very little that you should be attaching, if anything. In fact, I've got a discussion here. I'm just going to give you a quick demonstration on this. This is my design shell, so it's got all kinds of stuff in it for the design of the course because I keep redesigning it. So here's our test discussion, and I'm going to reply. And let's see. So I've got my narrative, text, whatever this is, my discussion, responses are here. And then let's say I want to attach a picture. So I'm going to go into images, and you can do this too, and put that right inside of my posting. Now I may want to make it smaller so I can, drag it and resize it and center it and, do all kinds of really cool stuff. I can also embed or record. Again, be careful about the recording. Make sure that you have a good mic and make sure that there's a very good reason to do this. In our course, I'm not really sure that there will be a good reason for you to record something unless, like I said before, you're doing an analysis of a user interface and that kind of thing. So be careful about embedding pictures too. I could also probably go into my files here instead of my images, which you see over here to the right. I want to go into the images to embed an image, and I can do that in a couple of different places here. This is probably the shortest. However, from a design perspective, I'm always using the images over here to make sure that I'm, putting everything where it belongs, because sorting and ordering is key for the back-end administration of any LMS. So that's how you're going to embed, but you could theoretically just put the file there. The problem is you can't see it. And so it's the same issue of uploading an attachment that doesn't need to be an attachment. So, if I'm going to post this and show you what it looks like, there's my text, blah, blah, blah. Which is easier to interact with? The picture or the file name of the picture? So I'm going to pop out the file name of the picture here so you can see what that looks like. And see, now I have to download it, and then I have to, look at that picture, and it's, how many more steps did I just do? 4 or 5, something like that. So see, there's the picture. That's kind of beyond what I really need to do. So keep all that in mind. I think that's just about it. We're rolling right along. I've retooled the order of our course just a bit because I wanted to get the sequencing right. When I ran this last year, there was no information, nothing. There was nothing. So I built this from the ground up, and my goal was to build it without requiring a textbook because this stuff is very dynamic, and because I also wanted to get away from the academic viewpoints of what usability is and get very much immersed into what we would see if, we're practitioners in the field. Let's say we're UX UI consultants. What materials do we look at? What reading do we do? What types of exercises will we do to prepare for our jobs? Or what will we do every day on the job? So that's kind of where we're coming from the standpoint of the flow. So I'm tweaking that, and hopefully this week when we talk about ethics, dark patterns, and user interfaces, it will flow from last week's work into next week's work, and so on. So if you do have comments about the sequencing at the end of the course, let me know what that would be, and any user side suggestions you have, I would definitely welcome. So that's about it. The other thing that I mentioned in the announcement is that it's been my experience that students don't listen to these types of things, this little podcasty thing that I'm doing here. Excuse me here. It's very dusty. I'm going to sneeze. And the problem is that shows in their work, because it's not like I'm doing these things for any other reason except for to inform your work and to point out things that you need to know, to point out things that are really important for you to be successful for that week or for the balance of the course. Okay, so nobody wants to waste their time either making these videos slash podcasts. So I hope that I'm using your time well, but if you don't look at or listen to these things, you will miss things. So there you have it. If you have any questions, put them on the FAQs board, and keep up the good work. I think that you're doing a good job. We're halfway through, so go you. Keep going. Thanks, everybody.